Hi, this is Curtis Allen. Earlier today, we recorded our Star Wars retrospective, and I just wanted to let you know that we did have some technical difficulty on a couple of the mics later on in the podcast. Although you can hear our guests, you'll be able to tell they're not exactly on par with the rest of our mics. Sorry for the problems, and we will correct those in the future. But until then, I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of History Through Film podcast. This is going to be a fun one. Today, we're going to tackle our Star Wars retrospective, and man, do I have a panel today. I've got Around the Horn, Nick Madeline, Alex Winkler,
Hello.
A couple of new ones with Will Meyer and Jason Feedback. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves just quickly?
Hi, yeah, this is my third one, our second podcast. Wow. I've taught history for 11 years now, and really excited to talk about one of my favorite movie franchises.
Yeah, glad to be back on here with all of you guys. Third podcast, Rockin' Indiana Jones, but probably my favorite film series of those three is Star Wars. So glad to join you here today.
Will Meyer, teaching science here for the last 8 years, and kind of a podcast newbie here, so I'm hoping I don't crash the party too bad, but definitely pumped about what we're going to talk about here today with Star Wars.
I'm Jason Feedback, and I just really like Star Wars.
Nice. Okay. Good introduction, everyone. Here's the thing. We were originally going to talk about just the original trilogy, and because The Last Jedi had come out last week, we decided why not just have a free-for-all, maybe tackle this one trilogy at a time, just talk a little bit about what we love about the movies, maybe some things that we speculated that we saw, or even speculate about some of the future movies that are going to be coming out. I'll go ahead and just start quickly. One thing that we like to do on this show is talk a little bit about what is your first experience with the film. Just real quickly, I've distinguished that I'm the oldest one at this table, and that's fine. But I was around in 1977, about 5 or 6 years old when I saw Star Wars. I remember seeing it distinctly at the Glenwood Theater on 95th and Metcalf. Loaded up the car with my whole family, went to go see that. And what was great about the lobby is they had all the costumes and props and things like that. A little bit of what they used to do back in the day when a movie would travel from city to city. Empire Strikes Back, I saw at the Midland downtown, and then I went back to Glenwood to see Return of the Jedi. And what about you guys, Nick?
I was not even born yet, and I was born in '78. So my first experience with Star Wars came as I stole away from my parents and turned on HBO. I would have been kindergarten probably, and the opening sequence and the words coming down. The funny thing with that is HBO had a very similar opening for the longest time. So every time I heard that come on, I swore Star Wars was on, but was hooked forever. I saw Empire. That would have been in probably Homestead, Florida, and then Return of the Jedi. Always was a big deal with me and my dad. We went out always, just him and I, and went and saw the movies, and something that we kind of geeked on, and it was pretty cool.
You know, I was at my grandparents' house. I was probably, 6 or 7 years old, I was born a few years after you guys, so I never had a chance to watch the original trilogy.
2014, right, Alex?
In the theaters, but I remember I turned on, or they had a VHS copy of The Phantom Menace, the first of the prequel, and I got about halfway through it before I had to leave and go home.
Because you hated it.
And you got to remember, it was
bad.
6 and 7-year-old Alex, and they sent me home with not only The Phantom Menace, but the original trilogy. And I actually went and watched the original trilogy before I finished Phantom Menace. I remember that distinctly, and for the next several years of my young childhood life, I read all the Star Wars books. I watched all the movies. I remember distinctly in my neighborhood, a bunch of the kids in my neighborhood, we all got hooked at the same time. And so we all had the toy lightsabers, and we'd be running around in our parents' backyards, again, from a really young age. It was definitely a fun part of my childhood, for sure.
That's funny. I still do that, running around with lightsabers. in my
I'll vouch for
classroom.
that. I'll vouch for
Yeah.
that. He
Yeah.
does actually.
Will, what about you? First experience with Star Wars?
Yeah, timeline similar to Nick, but I was born in '84, so actually all three of the original trilogy movies have been made. And much like these two guys, elementary school, is when it really resonates with me. And I watched all three, in a row. I just absolutely loved it. My dad and my older brother, same thing. So we kind of always used to watch that every holiday break. Watch Trilogy every single year, and it was always Star Wars, no matter what. And Indiana Jones we'd fill in there too as well. But yeah, just the imagination, just the ability to pretend you're somebody else at that age, and it was really fascinating, really awesome.
Very cool. Jason?
I saw Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi in theaters, and we had the VHS version. That's how old I am of the original Star Wars, and it's always been a family thing for us. And my parents, we'd always go to the movies. We'd put the movie in the VCR and play it, and it was just a thing we did together. Star Wars toys, playing Star Wars all the time, lightsaber fights with sticks, all that stuff. And now the fun part, I think, on the other side of it is now I actually get to enjoy it with my own kids, which I never thought of that when you're young growing up, enjoying these things of, wow, someday I'm going to watch this with my own kids, and they're going to love it as much as I did. So I think that's a cool thing. It's just a family generational thing.
Absolutely. That is...
Yeah, absolutely, and kind of add on to that, seeing the Last Jedi last week, probably the coolest part of all of it were the amount of kids, probably between the ages of 6 and 10, and how much they got into the movie. I mean, you had cheering and claps, at different times, and laughing and big gasps, and seeing the reaction of kind of that next generation.
Yeah, it's funny that you guys mentioned that, because my son, who's 15, he's not so much into movies, but the one thing I succeeded on was indoctrinating him into the Star Wars universe. It's funny because he likes Star Wars, he likes a little bit of Indiana Jones, but that's the one thing that I feel like I didn't have to do a lot to get him into the universe, other than just popping the movie in at a young kid when he was a young kid and just letting it play. And since then, he's been hooked as well. So. Yeah. So as far as the original trilogy goes, I will say, just from my class perspective, I have used it before to teach like the hero's journey, the story of mythologies, and how Star Wars really follows that structure, just like a lot of other fantasy films follow that similar structure. But we also know that Star Wars is kind of steeped in real history, and I kind of tackled that as well. Nick, did you have something you wanted to kind of add to that quickly about, where does Star Wars get some of its history from? What was Lucas doing when he was writing the original story?
Yeah, there's a ton of historical references throughout this. Lucas, being a historian himself, he calls himself a historian, loves history. There's influences from everywhere in these movies. You have the Nazi influence, from the stormtroopers to the helmets, to kind of even the rise of Senator Palpatine. He just draws right upon it. You've got, obviously the Richard Nixon influence from the 1970s when he was, when they were originally putting these things out. You've got Vietnam with the Ewoks and Endor scenes. You've got ancient Rome, obviously with comments towards the Senate, the Empire, and the Republic. Naboo in the going back into the newer series, if you call them that, resembles Imperial Rome, just the look of it, and pod racing. Obviously it's a prelude to chariot racing, and the Cold War influences are all there, but it's steeped in history all the way through.
Yeah. And that's something else that I've used before, is I've used the rise of Palpatine, not to get it, we're getting a little bit into the prequels, but I might as well just mention it. I've used the rise of Palpatine and how it kind of mirrors the rise of Hitler. He honestly did, mirror that when he was writing the stories, and used some of the same beats when Hitler came into power.
Well,
and
even the theme of democracies don't fall.
Yes.
Democracies are given away, and
Yes.
the people gave away the power of the Senate in the movie, and people of Germany gave away the power to Adolf Hitler
Yeah.
as he was coming through. So.
And as far as the Vietnam War goes, quite frankly, the empire is the United States from Lucas's point of view. And he wasn't saying that we as a nation are evil. What he was basically saying is that large empires sometimes fall to smaller factions of rebels.
And that comes straight from the American Revolution
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, American
There's-
Revolution and many others. So, the whole point is sometimes, we want to question, why would you use Star Wars as a teaching tool? There's just too much there not to use it.
Right.
Philosophically, I know Jason was going to talk a little bit about later on about how Anakin brings balance to the Force. You could have conversations just to get kids thinking about these elements a little deeper. And the idea is that, Star Wars, the story is just a Kickstarter, just to get them to think in that direction. So let's just talk about the original trilogy, guys. Not in any particular order. What do you love about it? What's your favorite? Why? Why should we care? Go.
Again, there's going to be so much to talk about. Where do you begin with this? Just the fact that those three, kind of go in these hierarchs of, good, this new hope, that we have. That hope is one of the things that, in the darkest of times, that everybody can hold on to, realistic or fantasy. And then in the second one, which is my personal favorite of all the Star Wars, is, and again, how it's dark, and how it's, hey, that's sometimes what has to happen in order for good to, triumph, or in order to have a good day, you have to have some bad days in there.
Yeah, the second chapters are usually always dark, no matter what you're talking about with Harry Potter or Back to the Future,
Absolutely.
or even Jaws 2.
Indiana Jones is in there as well. Jaws 2, yikes. Dark for a different way there.
Yeah.
And then, you end up with, obviously the Return of the Jedi, and good wins out, and it has to go through struggles. It has to go through, which makes that ending so much better. Again, we'll probably go back and forth here, but that's just my initial thoughts.
I've always said that Empire Strikes Back is probably my favorite of the trilogy, but Return of the Jedi is the most fun to watch.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Well
I'd agree with
It's
that.
just like it culminates into. I mean, that's the skiff barge scene with Jabba the Hutt, going into the Sarlacc pit. There's nothing better than that.
Absolutely.
Right.
You
Well,
know.
the lightsaber duel at the end, and it gets good in Empire, but then Return of the Jedi, it lasts longer. It's just more of a that lightsaber. It's almost been building up, because in the first A New Hope, you see the very short-lived lightsaber duel between Ben Kenobi and Darth
Where they're
Vader.
poking each other.
Yeah, and it's
There you
not.
go, tickle, tickle.
And it builds it up, and in Empire it's pretty good. But then in Return of the Jedi, the lightsaber duel in that, as a kid, for me when I first saw it, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is awesome right here. This is Star Wars. I mean,
Well, and I think it's funny because if you're going to talk favorite movies, it changes as you age too. Because Little Nick would have ranked him Return of the Jedi, probably then New Hope, and then Empire. But as you get older and you start to see more come out, and you pick up on more stuff, and the darker movie, the Empire Strikes Back, shows you true character. You get to see the true character come out. Are they loyal? Are they not loyal? Where are they going from there? And I think that as an adult, as I've watched it more and more, that's really what I geek on. It's just really watching the characters develop, which you see a lot of in Empire.
Yeah, I will say just real quickly, in the defense of The Last Jedi, which we'll talk about in a little while, but it's been getting some, either it's really split. There's been a lot of great praise. There's been a lot of negative praise about how different it is. I do remember walking out of The Empire Strikes Back thinking to myself, that was completely different than Star Wars.
Right.
At the time, I knew it as Star Wars, not A New Hope. So it took me a while to adjust to, why didn't just this follow the same pattern as Star Wars? To me, The Empire Strikes Back was so different, and that's what just made it great, is that it wasn't the same story retold again.
Right.
So, Jason, anything to add about the old trilogy?
I was a big fan of Return of the Jedi because it closed everything for me. I didn't, Star Wars New Hope was awesome just because you got an introduction, and then as it continued on, I didn't like Empire Strikes Back as a youngster because Luke got his hand cut off.
yeah.
Han Solo's stuck. We don't know if he's dead or not.
What are you doing to my
happened.
heroes?
Right.
And it's just like, Lando Calrissian, who is he? Is he a good guy or a bad guy? Like, I liked the movies because they were black and white. There's good and there's evil, and they're fighting. and they obviously have their own reasons to fight each other. But I didn't like the way it ended in Return of the Jedi. Even Darth Vader could be a good guy, and so I really enjoyed that part. I thought the Ewoks and all the different settings that they were in was just, to me, was unreal. And
The three battle scenes going on simultaneous. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. It's like bam, bam, and cutting from one to the other, and you always you're like, oh, let's go back to the lightsaber scene, and then you're like, oh, I want to see what's going on here, and he did a wonderful job of meshing all that together and just making it just edge of your chair type of view.
And one thing that's great looking back at A New Hope is that if you rewatch it again, which I know a lot of us have, but if you really rewatch it and kind of study the whole story, there are so many unanswered questions in that film and in that story that if you see it for the first time, you're probably thinking, what is this? What is that? The Force is hardly even mentioned. Mm-hmm. I mean, they talk about it, yeah, but you don't really see how it is utilized by the Jedis themselves. It's more Darth Vader choking somebody, and then that's about it.
It's funny you say that, though, because do we think of all of these unanswered questions now as, super geek boy Star Wars fans?
Well,
like when we were back then, it's like we're the adults, because none of us were adults at that time. We're adults walking. Yeah, Curtis may have been, but we're adults walking out of that film, the original Star Wars, thinking, man, they didn't explain this, or they didn't explain this, or they didn't explain this, or is it the fact that we've come to expect it? And because they do develop everything, and then do we ask those questions now because we've seen the other 6 of them?
Yeah, I kind of have an answer to that, I think, because when people walked out of The Force Awakens, whether you loved it or you didn't like it or whatever, I loved it, but everyone complained like there are just so many unanswered questions. And my thought was, did you ever watch A New Hope?
Right.
Because if that movie would have ended without the other two, you could have walked out of there going, what's the Clone Wars? What's a Jedi really like? What is the power of the Force? Can you really use it?
They gave us what you needed at that
Yeah.
time. I mean,
Now that we have the answers with Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and people say, well, there's so many unanswered questions, like in The Force Awakens, for instance, and they could even say that about The Last Jedi as well. It just seems like, just hold on, and not every question has to be answered, by the way, too.
No, it's a lesson I remember my composition teacher in high school in senior English telling us, an older guy, teaching for several years, had taught at the college level at one point, one of my favorite teachers I ever had. He stressed and told us so many times over and over again, a great story has ambiguity in it.
Yeah.
There are things that don't have to be answered. Not every single thing has to be figured out. And we don't figure everything out. Which is one reason we can sit here today and spin all these different ideas and these thoughts and theories off each other, because everything's not clear cut. Everything's not right there, which, one, it's great for a classroom because it leads to interpretation and perspective on the way you can view things. But I think what makes 4, 5, and 6 so good is the progression of the story, and we do get some questions answered, but also the character development.
Well, and mystery is always good in these type of stories. Think about it. We hear Jabba the Hutt being mentioned somewhat in Star Wars A New Hope. And then we get the special editions, and you're shown Jabba the Hutt, of course, after we've seen Return of the Jedi, so we know what he looks like. But I just wish that sometimes it seems like now fans want everything answered, and they don't want just things left unanswered. And to me, that's...
It was the special edition was forced.
Some of the mystery of Darth Vader was ruined with the prequels, but...
I agree.
Okay. But let's move into, just real quickly, the special editions, which came out in 1997, which, by the way, I saw again at Glenwood, and I took my nieces. That was me passing down my Star Wars experience to my nieces at the time.
That's really cool.
I was actually interviewed on Channel 5 News.
Wow.
Yeah.
We gotta find that clip.
I'm on record saying that Star Wars changed my life, and my buddies never let that down. It was awful.
Not your the birth of your kids or your marriage.
But again, I was only 20. I was 26. I wasn't even married yet.
Okay.
I was just like I was like 2 short years from meeting my wife, so I had a lot of growing up to do between now and then.
When's that going to happen?
But still
We're
waiting.
Still waiting. Yeah.
Wife says that's happened.
Any complaints about the special editions?
I didn't like the added scenes that they put into A New Hope. The Jabba scene just looked cheesy. They didn't need to add it. They didn't need to CGI things into the movie. And I know they were trying to update it, and they needed new special effects. But the best part of the original trilogy was even the special effects were cutting edge back in 77, but by 1997, yeah, the special effects aren't there. But it didn't matter because the story was so good. It was so captivating that even kids of the 90s, they'd look past all that because the story was just great.
So here's where I'll date
Adding it all in
myself.
just made. I think it made the graphics look. I don't know. I didn't.
Let me
get it.
say one quick thing before Alex chimes in, because I did want to. I wanted an opportunity to kind of not sell this book because I'm in no way getting any money from it. But there's a book called "How Star Wars Conquered the Universe" by Chris Taylor, and what's interesting about it, there's a chapter on the special editions, and Lucas actually admits the reason why the special editions were done. He would tell you, "I never had enough money to finish the films," but what he was doing behind the scenes is, look what I can do with new computer graphics. And literally, the special editions were a way for him to practice and tinker to see if it could work to set up the prequels. So there's some good and bad in that. But Alex, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I'll date myself here in a different sort of way of dating yourself. I saw the special editions first. That was the original trilogy that I saw.
Yeah.
It wasn't the original. It was the special edition ones that had the CGI in there. And I remember distinctly watching those, and then when I watched the non-altered original, I thought, wait, hold on a second.
I'm missing some scenes here.
That Sarlacc pit looks extremely different.
How did the monster from Little Shop of Horrors get on Tatooine?
That's true.
I mean, I don't know, Will, Jason, what you guys feel about it. I'll just say real quickly, I have no problem with The Empire Strikes Back. If you rewatch the special editions, I think they look great. Some things in A New Hope do work. Some things in Jedi do, except they cut out Nub Nub, Yub Nub, the Celebration Ewok song. Are you kidding me? And that horrible dance number. I don't because he had to tie in the prequels because on the very, very new special editions after the prequels came out, you now do that flash to the different planets like Coruscant and Naboo where they're all celebrating. Now in 97, though, they did kind of change the song to something, I don't know, to some kind of more
It
celebration
worked.
thing.
Oh yeah.
We do know that
Nothing better than Nub
Stormtrooper
Nub.
helmets make great drums.
Of course they do. What about you guys? Thoughts on the special editions? Anything at all that stands out, or are you guys okay with them?
I was okay with it. I thought it did a good job of tying everything together.
Yeah.
There were some loose ends, but to me, it brought all of it back to what it really is. It's just Star Wars. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's the entire thing. You can't just look at one. It all comes together. And I thought that when they did that, I thought that's what they were trying to do.
I will
Make
s-
a lot more money.
Yeah, but when you look at them as a whole
run in the
now,
second
you look at all the films as a whole now, the special editions almost kind of fit in because there are some new and shiny parts to it that, if you watch the original cuts, you're like, yeah, that kind of looks like a 1977 movie. But so maybe it does work for the best. How about the
I'm gonna still vote
prequels?
No. I'm still voting
No,
Still
no.
voting no. Yeah.
Don't be old man,
Good try to
go
sell
roundtable
job. No,
over.
don't change things that are working.
All right, so 1999, the Phantom Menace comes out, Episode 1, Star Wars. I'll say one quick thing about it, and then I'll move on to you guys if you want to talk about. I do not hate the Phantom Menace. I think the last 20, 25 minutes in that movie are just awesome with the lightsaber scene and Darth Maul and all that. From kind of a personal experience, something that'll always stick with me. I remember seeing that movie at Oak Park AMC 6. It was the theaters that were outside of the Oak Park Mall. It's the last movie I was able to take my dad to.
Oh, cool.
And about 5 months later, he died of cancer. So he was my partner in crime when we would go see a lot of films like that. And that's something I'll never forget because he knew how much Star Wars meant to me.
Right.
And the fact that I was like, Dad, you want to go see the new Star Wars? Of course he did. And then that was the last one I was able to take him to. So not to get too sentimental, but that's just something that always sticks in my mind. People
cool
have all
story.
kinds of stories about
Absolutely.
Star Wars. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own opinions on Phantom Menace and good and bad, but I tend to focus on I just love the relationship between Ewan McGregor's character, the young Obi-Wan, and meeting Anakin, and then kind of seeing, and then Qui-Gon, and how you can kind of see how, yeah, the council doesn't think he's ready and all that, but they also see the optimism and the ability in it, and how they trust him to do that, and then knowing what we know now all the way through, you can go back and kind of see that, okay, was it faulted from the beginning? Like, no matter what they did, he was going to turn into who he did, or could they have done something better if they were a little more patient, but you also see the good in it. And I just love the young Anakin background and the character development of that.
The story's good. I think the story overall is good. It's just some of the execution is a little rough, a little, the chemistry between the actors. The idea that, if you watch it's actually fascinating to watch some of the behind the scenes of how they made these films, because literally they're standing in rooms with nothing but green walls. And, these actors, Lucas is just like, could you do it a little faster this time? Ready, action. And they're like, what am I looking at, George? And there was nobody to tell him no. By this point, the stories that you hear about Lucas is that he wanted to finance his own films. He didn't want anybody to tell him, cut it like this or make it in like this, especially with Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He financed them themselves. But once he gets to the prequels, there's nobody to tell him no.
Yeah.
Like, George, this isn't
He
going.
needed a lot of no.
You need a balance, just like in the Force and in the movie, you need a balance.
He needed a lot of no in this.
Yeah.
And it really, to me, like you said, the story is fine. I'm good with the story. I'm not good with the execution. And to be honest with you, the only really appealing character that came out of the trilogy was Darth Maul. He intrigued me. It was a good character, is a good villain, probably right up there with with Darth Vader, and that sounds horrible, but he's about the only thing that appealed to me in all three of these movies. Anakin was a whiny little child, and that doesn't change throughout all three movies. It's just him crying. Jar Jar Binks, holy cow! I'm not going to go any further with that. Like I said, it just didn't. The acting was subpar to me. The story was good. I do like the story. The action scenes were good. The graphics were good. I can't fault those, but just the character development on that just drove me crazy.
Nowadays, it almost looks like a cartoon.
It does. It does. With
How do you make Samuel L. Jackson a bad actor?
I don't know. I mean, come on, just give him some snakes on a plane and let him go.
Jason, what do you think? Do you have any defense on these?
I hate Jar Jar Binks. He's really, I liked the first three episodes because, Darth Vader ended up being good in Return of the Jedi. He kind of saved Luke. How did Luke know he was still good? And it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was kind of a big deal, but I liked seeing what he was and why he was so influential and why I liked seeing how it all came together, overlooking the bad acting and the over CGI and all that, and there's the crazy stuff they had with everything. I like seeing Anakin and how he got to be Darth Vader, because as a kid, why would anybody want to be on the dark side?
Yeah.
Force
That's
lightning.
true.
Force lightning.
Force lightning.
Women, force lightning and women, which is a good message to what.
Why would anybody choose that? Well, then you kind of got into talking about developing a character. Who was Darth Vader? Well, before that, we just knew he was the baddest dude in the universe. Well, how did he get to that point?
Yeah.
Well, he had that fear, and fear leads to the dark side. And
You talk about Palpatine too.
No, it's just
We haven't
women.
mentioned that.
Women lead to the dark side.
And
Yeah.
then who's the emperor? Because then we
Yeah,
meet
I
the
wanna
emperor,
know that,
and then
yeah.
we get the story on him. And how did the empire even become the empire? Who would let that happen? And just to see all that.
The story's good. The story's good.
The storyline
The story's
to me
good.
is
Yeah.
the only thing besides Jar Jar Binks.
I mean, the way you're telling it makes me want to actually go watch it again, because you're right.
I can't believe I'm about to say this. In defense of Jar Jar Binks.
Oh God.
There's always
As
one. There's always one.
as a I actually did watch this movie on Saturday.
Did you have a crush on him?
As a 6 or 7-year-old watching Phantom Menace, I thought Jar Jar Binks was hilarious.
Of course.
And that is my only defense of Jar Jar Binks, because I went and I rewatched the Phantom. I hadn't seen the Phantom Menace in a long time. It was on TV.
Do you still
Saturday
find him
morning.
hilarious?
And no, I can't stand him.
Okay.
But as a 6 and 7-year-old, it has helped hook me into the franchise
Well-
even more. Like,
Wasn't
oh,
that part of
So
it?
it's a money grab. It's a money
Alex,
grab.
in defense of your defense, I made these films for little kids,
yeah, it's,
not grown men.
and it
Yeah,
worked.
and it's us grown men who aren't able to handle the fact that Lucas made the trilogies for little kids.
The emotions
Okay.
are a little loud in Curtis's voice.
So
If it gets
it's
loud, that's why.
oh, yeah, but it's true though. I never had a problem with Jar Jar Binks. I really didn't. The only problem I have with Jar Jar Binks is after I got out of the Phantom Menace and possibly Attack of the Clones, and I was just like, gosh, these movies just aren't holding up now like I thought they did the first time I saw them, or the first
'Cause you
time
were
you
so
experienced
hungry
it.
for 'em.
Yeah, you were hungry.
You were
for
hungry.
them.
You're
Yeah.
hungry for them.
15
We've been in a drought.
But
for a
Jason's
long
right.
time.
The idea of the Emperor coming to power, that was very interesting. The whole, the story of how Anakin does turn to the dark side, it's just the fact that it's executed like within 10 minutes of the film. And you're like, okay, from 10 minutes ago, you were with Obi-Wan Kenobi, now you're killing small children. And everyone's talked about that. And I get it. I mean, it's just the execution isn't spot on. But
But see, and
You
he
could see
makes
that coming.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you could see the
it
anger
starting
building
to
up.
take over, and the Emperor getting his hands on him
yeah.
and using that fear to move
guide
him.
him.
No, but back to your point a second ago, though, he makes these films for little kids, but the newer films are not this. I'm sorry. Wow, The Last Jedi and Force Awakens, they're getting kid audiences as well.
Yeah.
They're not made in the same way.
No,
so
they're not.
He can say whatever he wants to. I was making it for little kids, but he didn't have to make them in that way to get the little kids.
Yeah.
Because you're still going to get them no matter what.
Revenge of
Either
the
way.
Sith, though, was not a happy-go-lucky.
It was
Oh.
PG-13.
Yes.
The first PG-13 Star Wars
PG-13
was the
one.
one that got the dads back.
Absolutely.
That's true.
the
You know,
graphic
that was the
one.
one.
That's the one.
Still
Don't
awesome.
bring
me.
your kids yet.
And if you want to watch something interesting, watch the original trailer for Revenge of the Sith. When you watch the trailer, you are captivated. It's one of the best trailers in probably the Star Wars films. It's just too bad that trailer was not exactly the way the movie turned out. The trailer is awesome. You're like, oh my gosh, this is fine. We're finally going to see it. And yes, the movie's good, but there are just things that are wrong. There's problems.
And the big elephant in the room in all of this is you're asked to buy into characters, and Anakin plays probably the paramount role in all of these different films. Where in the back of your mind, you know where it's going, so how much can you really buy into him?
Right.
Seeing the first ones first, Darth Vader was the most evil thing on the planet. It was like Adolf Hitler, Darth Vader, right? There you are. There's your duo. So how was I ever supposed to buy into this whiny little blonde kid who I know what he's going to turn out to be? So why am I going to emotionally invest in this? Because I know where it's going, and that,
Yeah.
I guess that was probably the other hard part of all of it. With a prequel, you know where it's going. So where's my hero, right? Is it Obi-Wan? Well, yeah, but he's not featured. They featured Anakin and his love story and all of this. But I know where it's going, and I can't get into it.
Too, is fast forward now, knowing from the Return of the Jedi and what Jason loves, where the good wins out, and but you can see why, and he kind of hit on it, why Darth Vader, who's Anakin, he knows the Emperor lied to him. He said, hey, you can save Padme, come to the dark side. And then he couldn't save Padme, and
Yeah.
he's figuring out, he knows that, and he has to live and look at the Emperor every single day knowing he lied to him. So when his boy comes, Luke, that you could see that legitimately, okay, after all this time, he's still going to side with his family.
But it's still not going to redeem him in my eyes. All the other stuff that Darth Vader did, it's like one act of goodness does not make up for a lifetime of killing of small children and
The younglings.
clubbing of baby
Younglings.
seals, right?
Younglings.
No, it's not going to make up for all of it. I still walk out of there going, okay, I still hate him, right? I still hated him when I was 9.
my
and so
yard, kid.
exactly. So
Well, Jason, what about your theory of how Anakin brings balance to the Force? Did you want to go into that at all?
I'll go into it.
Okay.
So I'll give the quick version.
All right.
So when we're introduced to Anakin as a small child, we're told Obi-Wan thinks that he's a prophecy to bring balance to the Force. They think he's special, so they bring him to the Jedi Council of 10 people.
right.
They're all over the
people are
universe.
just like beings.
Yes, and
Jedis.
they're even holographing people in so they can sit in on the meeting. So there's a bunch of them, and then there's Darth Maul.
Right.
So it's like 20-1. So they want to bring in Anakin, who's going to bring balance to the Force. So as we move along, in the second movie, Order 66 is executed. So now you have Darth Maul's dead, and you have Anakin kind of moving towards the Emperor, who is also a Sith. Everyone's killed except for Yoda and Obi-Wan. So there's 2
Right.
on the good guys.
That's pretty good.
And now there's 1.5 on the bad guys.
Right.
So Anakin killing all the younglings in the third one, now it's balanced. It's 2 and 2.
Prophecy revealed, right?
And so then as we move through the second group of movies, we have Obi-Wan dies, and so now it's Luke
And Yoda,
and Yoda.
right?
So now there's 2 as we move into Empire. So now it's Darth Vader and the Emperor,
Right.
and we have Yoda and Luke. So then we go through that. Yoda dies. Darth Vader, aka Anakin, kills the Emperor, but he ends up dying anyway. So he balanced the Force.
He did.
a lot of
Multiple
So
times,
He did
yeah.
fulfill the prophecy, and Obi-Wan was right.
He always was. So
Yeah.
it leads us to the whole Snoke. Where did Snoke come from? You know, I'm not that we need to go there now, but as you talk through all of that, you know, the Force is balanced for all of maybe 2 minutes of movie time, right at the very, very end, and then all you have is Luke. And so where then does it balance itself?
Well, I will
So-
say that as far as Snoke is concerned, if we're going to go there right now, there is no mention of Sith in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. There not really isn't a Sith order.
Right.
Snoke is that unknown power that has no backstory as of now.
Right.
Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Last Jedi, we're going to talk about something right now that happens in The Last Jedi. We might as well just say it.
Yeah.
Snoke is killed by Kylo Ren, Ben Solo.
Maybe the
And
best scene of the whole movie when that all
possibly
takes
the
place.
best scene of the whole movie. And why a lot of Star Wars fans are upset, the fanboys, the hardcores, whatever you want to call them. I'm gonna tell you, when I saw it on that Thursday night, I was a little shocked.
with
I
you.
was
We
like,
talked about that.
whoa,
Yeah, they just
I was not
offered.
expecting that. Okay. And I wasn't angry about it. When I walked out, I was just like, I'm not sure really what to think about that. But what the fanboys, what all the people that with all their theories wanted to happen is that Snoke was going to be somebody from the past, whether it was Mace Windu. What? Okay, but that was a theory. Whether it was Darth Plagueis, who was the master of Palpatine, before. And, you know, and Darth Plagueis isn't really in the Star Wars canon anymore, at least officially. Now, his name's maybe been mentioned around, and I think maybe they were trying to introduce him. But, you know, Rian Johnson himself, I'm going to say this right now. Rian Johnson himself, I just read an article last night, has answered to some of these problems that people have had with the film. And one thing he said was, okay, so during the scene when Rey and Kylo Ren are in the throne room of Snoke, and Snoke is egging on Kylo Ren to kill Rey, was he supposed to give some kind of 30-second monologue about, oh, and by the way, I'm actually Darth Plagueis, somebody from the past who was a master of the Emperor? Could you... What reaction did
Lucas
the
didn't write the film. So
Well, no. Here's the thing. What would Ray's reaction be? You tell me.
Great. I don't know. I don't
Who? I'm sorry. Who are you?
Right, yeah.
Darth Plagueis? Who?
Yeah.
And Kylo Ren, who of course is obsessed with his grandfather Darth Vader, may have heard of the name. But what did you want for him to say that, and then Ray go who, and then all of a sudden they kill him? Or I mean,
Well, and it's not completely closed yet either, because
we got a whole
you do
nother
have Kylo Ren, who spent a lot of time with Snoke. He may know the answers to these questions. We don't know. It
And
could
you're
come
right.
out- it could come out in dialogue within that. It could
we
come out
all
between the
want
two of
we
them.
all want a story that has some kind of closure. And I'm not saying I want to know
It's
where
the second
Snoke
movie
came
of a
from.
trilogy. So
Yeah.
we don't know. There is no closure.
I want to
yet.
know where Snow came from,
Sure.
but I'm okay with him not everything has to
Right.
be tied in with a neat, package and bow.
Absolutely.
But I just thought that was the most interesting thing that Johnson could say, because he's absolutely right.
Right.
Because if Ray would have said, "Oh yes, Darth Plagueis, I've heard of you." Really? When did this happen? Because you just heard of Luke Skywalker about 30 minutes before,
Right.
in The Force Awakens or
Right.
something.
All the
So-
other junk traders were sitting
Yeah.
around talking about Jedi canon and Sith canon before.
Yeah. Anyways,
backstories and no.
Well, let's do this. Let's just quickly talk. We're going to kind of wrap up this whole discussion with the new films. Force Awakens, retread of The New Hope or not?
You and I talked, a couple weeks ago, and how it was very similar. I mean, it had a lot of the same backstories. You have a kid living in the desert. Obviously Anakin had, all the way back to 3 of them, but Luke being an orphan, being raised by somebody different, and Rey being raised kind of by herself. That has some very similarities to it. You've got the passing of information in a hidden dark place at the
And a
beginning of
droid
the movie,
and-
and droids that take the information. But then again, there's some similarities to it. It's a different movie, but there's definitely you can go back through.
Well,
and find similarities.
Disney is Disney, and from a business perspective, J.J. Abrams, here's the keys. We need you just to reboot this, a soft reboot,
Right.
We're gonna
because
make a couple more.
we haven't had satisfactory movies for 30 years. Now, we just talked about the prequels. Yes, we like things about them, but you got to bring a whole
Right.
new audience into it. I
Yep.
get where they had the same beats. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't.
Love The Force Awakens.
Sure.
I know not everybody does,
No,
but
I do.
Jason, you weren't like a huge fan of The Force Awakens, or
I liked The Force Awakens. I thought it was great. I don't. You guys are all history teachers, so you get this, but I don't think history repeats itself. But I do think it rhymes, and I think when you are dealing with a certain theme that Star Wars continues to promote, I think it's okay to do that, and I think you're also getting that new group of people involved, but
Yeah.
you're still hooking, because we all went back for the next
Yeah,
one.
we did.
Like,
We
oh,
did.
man,
Decades
what's
and
going
decades
on
of Star
now?
Wars fans.
And so they have a way of keep pulling us in.
You're absolutely right. It was April of 2015. I was standing right over there in the corner of my room where I saw the Chewie "We're Home" clip from that,
In the fetal position.
and I think I was crying in front of my students. I had no problem with it. I was kicking, I was wailing. They loved it. It was the Han or the Chewie "We're Home" that really hooked everybody as far as the older generation into that film.
The movie theater erupted in applause.
Yeah.
In that scene when I was there, the whole theater just
Oh my
started
gosh.
clapping,
Absolutely.
and I mean it was
magical.
awesome.
It's what we
It
waited
really
for.
was.
It's what we waited
And
for.
that's, but then again, you talk about that movie, how there's only so many ways to create a storyline that's going to work, where you're not going to have another movie and another movie. You have to triumph, you have to set something up, you have to be a segue. But how they weren't afraid, and this was probably, you would know more, Curse. Harrison Ford's like, I'll do it, but you got to kill my character. Like, hey, that sucked to watch Han Solo.
He wanted to die in Return of the
Yeah,
Jedi
but
because he
also-
just didn't see any. But yeah, I mean, you got to. Well, Han Solo was the Ben Kenobi of The Force Awakens,
correct.
so you got to,
You're ready to
kill
kill
the
somebody
mentor.
off. Hey, okay, I'm vested now. I got to put on somebody else.
It is Harrison
And-
Ford. He could have just crashed the Millennium
But
Falcon.
Kylo had to
you know.
kill him. Kylo had to be the one to kill him.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
He
Yeah.
couldn't have died, in a wreck or get
No,
blown
hands of
up
anybody else,
in
yeah.
a starship fight or whatever.
Eaten by a
He
big
had to be killed by
sloth.
Sarlacc
Kylo
pit.
because
Sarlacc.
Kylo was weak. Kylo cried when he was trying to
Yep.
break down Rey.
Yeah.
He broke down
Yeah.
crying. Like, you're such a pansy right
He's
now.
he's
Yep.
kind of he's an emo Sith.
And he's-
an emo
yeah,
Sith.
sure. So
Yeah.
he had to kill everybody's
Han
favorite.
Solo, yeah.
Just
Well,
so he was
yeah.
a bad guy.
But
And
he's
Han-
still conflicted. Look at the Force Awakens, or not the Force Awakens. Let's look at the Last Jedi. He's
Yep.
still conflicted. He's still a conflicted individual.
He admitted he didn't hate his father. He's got some abandonment issues,
That's why
but
he wants to move on from everything.
wants power.
But he-
just
he wants
and
power.
wants to get rid of everything else.
He's a politician.
That's a good point, by the way, audience members, everyone freaking out. Didn't you listen to Kylo Ren over and over and
Yeah,
over in this
that's
movie?
what
Kill the past,
said.
move on. That's what Ryan Johnson. He's just let the movies progress.
Well,
Don't
that's
do
the beauty.
this.
That's the beauty of this movie. It's not going to follow the same trilogy as the first three. It's not. It's going to be different because this would have been more like a Return of the Jedi. To be honest, it had that more of a Return of the Jedi type of feel to it, closing all these different holes and filling stuff in and answering all those
Good
questions.
wins.
Right. Well, now we know the answers to a lot of these different questions. I'm really excited to see where the third one goes. It's not going to be Return of the Jedi. It's going to have to be
Sure.
something
What do
different.
you think about the humor? I thought the humor in Force Awakens was really good.
That was-
Not
Yeah.
over the top, but just cut some levity in there with some sarcasm.
yeah, I like
That was really good. I didn't think it was as good in The Last Jedi, but I thought there was some.
Oh, I don't know that
Oh, I think it
that
was
first
better.
scene where
Oh, I think the humor. in
He
the-
sends
Humor in
that-
The Last Jedi was better.
I thought it
Really?
was too.
Poe sends that message to Hux.
Oh, that's just like the opening.
You
scene.
rebels.
That's just
Right.
like
Yep,
the
still
opening
waiting for
scene.
Hux.
Yeah.
And it's even the simple things like we talked about last week as well. How the super geek fanboys are all upset that it was irreverent in different
Yeah,
times. It's
yeah, I know.
Luke throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder and
Like he was throwing a piece of trash
Right,
away. It was
absolutely.
just-
Where I've watched each of these movies probably 15, 20 times each at least, if not more. And I found it funny. I mean, you can't take yourself
Absolutely.
too seriously within this. It's still, I thought the
Especially
humor
because
was great.
actors wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a big part of that.
Right.
Rogue One.
I loved it.
Loved it.
Loved it.
Loved
Yeah,
it. Very
loved it.
different. It
Different
was
because almost everybody dies. But it has to show to set that up to what they
Yep.
went through. They just tell us about it.
Yeah.
You get
They
to
can't have a
feel it.
happy ending.
You get to feel it in that movie. Wow, this is true.
I thought the scenery in Rogue One was incredible. Some of the scenes of that were just absolutely
People
fantastic.
die in war, and
Yeah.
walking out, my wife or my daughter and my son were like, "Well, everyone just died in that film." I'm like, "Well, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
It fits, many rebels
Bad
were
guys
dying."
die too.
Did you
Yeah.
see any? Did you see any of those people in A New Hope? Yep, we knew they were probably
And
going to
that's
die.
that's what we haven't hit on the Last Jedi yet. Is guys, the rebellion is, or excuse me, the resistance is virtually destroyed.
They're in the Millennium Falcon.
That's it. That's it. That's it. So
It's
Everyone's on the short bus, making a way.
it's the arc. It's the arc, right? They got to rebuild from.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we talked about, it kind of has the Return of the Jedi feel, where the good guys kind of win in the Last Jedi, but at the same time, the resistance has been essentially crushed.
What about the New Order?
They won.
How
and
much
retreating.
is left of them? I don't know how much is left after.
Well, you're
know,
right. After
Right. I mean, we see like just a small portion of their really cool battleships, but the Dreadnought was awesome.
Yeah.
And the Dreadnought scene. How much is really left? I don't know.
you're talking about when Hilda or where she light speeds through all the ships. And,
Oh yeah, that scene is.
No, I mean,
it's
the
awesome.
ships were being destroyed, but the people most were surving. It, but you're right. We don't know.
We don't know. I mean,
don't know
because
the
at
size
the
of the
right
First
at
Order.
the end of The Force Awakens, you've got a big explosion. You figure a good chunk of their troops are all sitting on which planet was that?
Starkiller Base.
Starkiller
Great.
Base, right?
Or no, sorry.
Right. There's got to be. I don't know how much is really left of them. It'd be interesting. What are their numbers like? They're not clones anymore.
This is why, speculating, this is why, they're saying that hopefully the next episode 9 will take place a couple years after the events, because you give everyone time to, hopefully.
Plus, Rey's got to go through training.
Does she have to
She's
go
got
through
books.
training?
She's got books.
Well, who's
No, they didn't.
No,
they're-
not all of them.
They, so,
She stole 'em.
right before she gets right before she gets,
Watch it twice. You gotta watch it.
right before she gets in the little pod to go and meet Kylo Ren and Snoke, you see her shut the the drawer. And then she gets in, Chewie hands her a lightsaber, if you see
Yeah.
Finn,
And then you see,
tell
and
him.
Finn opens it up.
Then later on, Finn opens it up to get Rose a blanket, and you see the text right
Wait
there.
a second, I gotta watch the
Yep.
second
Right
time
towards
to see
the
that.
end.
So that would obviously play
All kinds of things. And Nick even caught like Luke Skywalker not leaving any footprints on the salt.
Salt. Like you watch that
When
footage
they
in
were
the battle.
sizing up. No, he said that right after we came out of the third time, or
Your third time.
my third time, his second time.
Yeah.
A lot of little clues there too. Of course, Luke looking younger and all that.
Hair. The hair.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was just really cool though.
Like
That's,
maybe he just got a shave and a haircut
so
for him.
the Force is something new that we haven't seen in The Last Jedi before, and the Force seems to be evolving or something. But Jason's got some problem with the FaceTiming that I guess happens in the Force.
I didn't like the force time talks where they could like talk to each other like FaceTime. But,
He calls it Force time.
I didn't like that. I thought it was like
Apple paid a lot of money to get that
So,
in there.
can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you not hear?
Why do you see where I'm at, but I can't?
I got a bad
You got bad
Metacalorian
Wi-Fi.
I got a bad
Apparently the
Metacalorian.
Empire doesn't have great Wi-Fi
No, they use T-Mobile. So.
Yeah.
as well as.
I guess we're not getting a sponsorship from T-Mobile.
Yeah.
History 37 podcast brought to you by
I
Verizon.
didn't like that because I kind of like, back in the old days, they could just feel each other's presence, and now they can actually
Talk to each other.
Now apparently you're FaceTiming everyone.
Yeah.
Only the ultra powerful. Now you notice only the
Yeah.
two big
Ultra
dogs
power.
had that skill at the end of it. It's not like Rey is dialing up, somebody on her force time.
I just didn't like it. I like the fact that maybe they didn't know exactly what the other one was doing, and they played that game a lot in the other Star Wars.
Yeah, especially since like Hoth, even then like in The Empire Strikes Back, right? Like Darth Vader, like they get close, like oh they're there. They're like, how do you know? He's like Skywalker.
My lord, there are so many. They're there. Okay, let's go.
All right.
Exactly, but now all of a sudden we can see.
Don't
so I
make
kinda
me
see your
choke
point
you.
there, Jason. But you know that those two are the main characters and they don't have much screen time. So
Right.
they have to find a way to connect.
But
with
they're
them.
extremely
So
strong
style.
with the Force too, because Luke says, "I've only seen this raw strength once before, and that was with
With
Kylo."
Yeah.
Ben, yeah, so-
And they're equals within
And
it.
Snoke was
Snoke was the mastermind behind
Snoke was their provider. Brought to you by Snoke. But Snoke was
I
intervening.
hear
That's
those
his
rates are
whole-
being cut in half.
Oh, hey. Snoke's rates were being slashed in half, literally.
You know, one thing we haven't really talked about within all of this is that idea of the haves versus have-nots, which are so evident within The Last Jedi. It's such a have-not type of world. You know, they're always the orphans, and it's, you know, they're always the underdog. Is the Republic's always the underdog within it? But you're definitely, you know, just the whole scene on the I'm bad with these planet names, but the Las Vegas in space. That what planet
Yeah,
is
Canto
that?
Bite.
The Canto Bite.
Canto
right?
Bite, yeah.
So they spend time. Rose spends time talking about, you know, what it's like to be an orphan and how the working class is completely under, well, just underrepresented and abused within that all. Right, absolutely. But you see that kind of within this whole movie.
There was
You
the
definitely
PETA
see it
scene.
within Rey.
The PETA scene.
It was the PETA scene.
I had no
right?
problem with it, though.
With the
I mean, it
point-
was, you
no,
know.
no. But I mean, that's I don't know if this is Ryan Johnson promoting communism or whether it's just, you know, it's I'm
Last
no.
film I watched.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'm outta
There's
here.
no Reaganomics within that one.
There's also that anti-war message in there where he's showing blueprints for, was it the TIE fighter and the X-Wing?
absolutely.
Oh, the
Yep.
same guy.
Yes.
Where'd all this money come from? Well, he's selling weapons.
To the
who?
bad guys.
Green,
Well, to
green
both.
wins.
Right, and then he shows it.
Gecko.
Yeah,
There is no,
absolutely.
well, and that's who DJ, the character,
Yeah.
on his hat, it says, "Don't join."
Yeah.
Right.
That's where the DJ, and he's basically, you know, and that's
Hey,
that's a character, by the
Very
way, I'd love to see.
underrepresented in that film. I thought he was going to make another appearance.
Yeah.
in
I
that
think
movie.
he's got it.
I'd
He's
love
gotta
to
be-
see
I
him
would
again
too.
in 9, though.
I would too.
Even though he sells him out,
And he fits the
you know.
Lando Calrissian. Like,
Yeah.
like, do he's good? Is he bad? And then maybe next movie we see him.
We also we need a Boba Fett though. We need a bounty hunter in this trilogy.
Well, I think we're going to get bounty hunters into what my next topic, real quickly, to kind of bring us to the end of our conversation for the day, is what do we want to look forward to in the Solo movie, which is supposed to come out in May. We haven't seen anything yet to this date. The last I heard was Paul Bettany, you know, who got a part when they had to do reshoots. He's come out saying that this Han Solo movie is a lot like a gangster film.
Oh, wow.
That excites me. That's
Yeah.
like, okay, that reeks of Jabba the Hutt. That reeks, or at least being mentioned. They have to
Sure.
mention Jabba the Hutt.
Well, he's got to play a big
but
role in it. He's,
yeah.
You know, they're the yeah.
Bounty hunters. I mean, if
gonna
you,
be
You gotta
It's
think
all gonna
Boba
fit
Fett's gonna be in it.
you
I would
you'd
love to
have
see the
think.
Fett
He's
man
not a-
make an
he's not-
appearance.
He's a character, he's not an actor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's a
So he
character,
would
and,
be easy to replicate.
and those two are tied to
Voice
each other.
isn't gonna be
Yep.
that hard,
No.
but they have a history that they never got into
Oh yeah.
With
the
the
whole
clones.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Greedo, I think
The way Boba
Greedo
Fett
makes an
went
appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way he went out and
Terrible.
You don't want to be digested and.
No, not for 3,000 years.
Well, you know, there's
still there.
rumors. There was
He's still
rumors for
hanging.
the longest time that Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit.
yeah, it's just not in. It's
just
it
not
hasn't
in
been
the official-
reintroduced into canon yet. People were hoping. They were
Right.
thinking that one of the characters in The Force Awakens was going to be him. I forget his name, but
He'd be old.
yeah, he'd be old.
He'd be old.
But
Definitely.
rumors of an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie coming out is kind of the next
so
kind of.
like way prequel.
Well, it would probably be between A New Hope, or excuse me, Revenge of the Sith, and maybe A New Hope. What was happening those 20 years?
Go back to his
Yeah,
where he was
well, it
discovered
could,
from. I mean,
but
if
it's
you're
gonna-
do it, then
Rumor
play
is
both
that
of them.
Ewan McGregor's going to play the part, so he's only aging. He'd be aging to the part to
Yeah,
you know
He's about the
looking
age,
like
yeah.
There was. It's not. I don't know if it's official, but there was a story that Darth Maul survives being
Yeah.
chopped
Oh, he
in
did.
half.
He did.
He does, and then him and Kenobi fight,
yeah.
on Tatooine.
that's in Rebels.
Yeah, which
I
would
watched
be,
Rebels.
Yeah, which would be, and it's not in the like the we didn't hear about it in A New Hope that he fought Darth
Right.
Maul again. But it's certainly been in Star Wars
Yeah,
lore.
it's still
which
it's part
would
of the
be
canon. Yeah,
awesome to see
Yep.
Darth Maul again.
Yeah.
Best lightsaber scene there was, that and one in Return of the Jedi.
And of course, Ryan Johnson's going to get his own trilogy. And from what we're hearing is that it's going to be something kind of separate from like, Force Awakens, Last Jedi. It's going to be something that takes place in the Star Wars universe, but maybe in another corner. That's what they've kind of said. I mean, there hasn't been any real official announcement, but what we're hearing is that it's going to be new characters, kind of a side story. Everyone's speculating on what it could be. Disney's getting their own streaming service. That's going to start in a couple years. They've already announced that they will have a Star Wars show on there, some type of series. There's all kinds of speculations of what that could be. It'd be great to see like a bounty hunter series or something like that. So, guys, any final thoughts on anything?
One thing we didn't,
Go ahead.
we totally missed on, and this is for all of our sentimental listeners out there, is the little wink, nudge, nudge at the end of The Last Jedi. Where's the love story? Right, that's the every trilogy or all the trilogies have had this real deep love story. And you thought for the longest time we wrestled with, will it be Finn and Rey? But at the end here, you see Rose and Finn, but you also see
all of a sudden
Rey and
Poe's not worried about the Resistance anymore, is he?
Oh, there's definitely a wink and a sly smile there. So are we going to
the most
see?
eligible bachelor in the galaxy right
hey,
now?
he's-
Hot shot pilot.
Come on now, he's freaking he's the reboot. He's the perfect mix of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. He's a smuggler and a TIE pilot. I mean,
That's when John
right,
Williams
not TIE, but X-wing.
John Williams' score took a aquatic guitar flavor.
Just for a moment.
Hi,
just for
I'm
a
Ray.
moment, you see the wink and the nudge, nudge, and I know if I could ever drag my wife to it, she'd be like, all at the very end, she'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute, are those two gonna get? Are those two gonna get together?" Yeah, I think so. Right, exactly. There's 2.5 hours worth, and you're waiting for the last.
And that's
3
about all
minutes of
you're gonna
of
get,
it.
yeah.
Who knows? Who knows where they're gonna take the love stories of those
Yeah,
two? But
who knows? Well, guys, anything else?
I'd
Jason?
like to know what they're going to do with Princess Leia in the next one. That's one of
Why did we not say anything about that?
And I did not like when she flew.
I didn't like it either.
Okay, can I say something about that real fast? Can I say one thing about that real quickly?
Sure.
So in the Star Wars canon, they have these books that come out that are part of the canon. It's just, average everyday fans don't read them. I don't even read all of them. But if you were to listen to some podcasts of guys that do, they kind of flesh out the whole story in a whole. There was a conversation between Yoda and Ben Kenobi back before Luke's training where, I'm paraphrasing, Ben says, "I'm bringing you Skywalker." Yoda says, "Great, when do I start her training?" And Ben says, "Her? I'm talking about Luke." And Yoda's basically, "Luke, I thought you were bringing me Leia." No, Luke's the one. Luke is the one who's going to, he's our new hope.
Right.
Well, so what that's alluding to is that they're possibly setting up the fact that Leia really could have been the stronger of the two Skywalkers. And the fact that she never uses the Force, or does she? And her wisdom and her guidance and her
Right.
leadership.
An empire to communicate with.
Yes,
Luke after he got hit.
exactly. But we've never really seen her use, other than she knew when Han died, of course, and she knows things like that are happening.
Well, and she's been leading the rebellion now for a long time. But you're right. Is it the guidance? Is it the wisdom? Is it she's not the fighter of the two, but she's the puppet master.
But-
if
She's
you will.
affected more people.
I'll agree with Jason, though. Jason, I think it's great to show that, oh my God, Leia's going to use the Force. Oh, here it is. And then it's just kind of corny. It's a little corny-ish.
I teared up when she was blown up
Yep.
out of the spaceship, and she's just sitting there, and she's not all, charred up or anything. And I thought, wow, what a tribute to the actress.
Yeah, to the actress
And I
that-
thought,
Carrie
well, this is a
Fisher, yeah.
fitting goodbye. And they just had that elongated just scope of her.
Yep, yeah.
And it was like, wow, she's really gone. And then she
Zip.
takes off flying, and it's like, what just
Yeah.
happened?
While more or less unconscious.
Just let her
Yeah.
go. Just let her go.
And you don't mention any Admiral Akbar. He gets a.
Chimmery.
Akbar, oh, come on. Where is the outrage?
Chimmery. Oh, sorry. I'm singing Mary Poppins songs over here.
It's like it blows up and it's like, Admiral Akbar's dead now. And everyone's like, ooh, okay, let's move on, right? Yeah, I
The guy
know.
deserved better than that.
I agree
Yeah,
with
by
you.
the way, Admiral Akbar, you're right. That guy needed a little bit more of a screen time. It's all boom, and then all of a sudden he's blown. No, but
for as big of a role as he played in Return of the Jedi.
Especially in Return.
Yeah, he had a lot of.
And Rogue One. I mean,
And Rogue One.
Or no,
absolutely.
not Rogue One, but Force Awakens.
Force Awakens.
That was Admiral Raddus.
Admiral Raddus.
Yeah, so and he may have been in there, but who knows? But
You figured it needed to be a little bit. I agree with you. Need to be a little bit bigger deal than just Admiral Akbar's dead. Oh,
Well, look, it's very
who's
popular.
next? Right.
by the way,
He's Porkins from Star Wars. He gets blown up.
Why didn't name the fat guy Porkins? Come on now, that's just not right.
why is Lucas so on the nose with his names? Darth Vader, father.
Right.
Porkins, the fat guy. Why did they just say that in the credits? Fat guy in an X-wing.
Right.
Fat guy in a small X-wing.
Right. No doubt.
Tom Kane is a guy. I don't know if you've heard his name before. He's an Overland Park resident who does the voice of Yoda, C-3PO. He also does trailers, motion, previews, things like that.
Pirates too. There's a Tom Kane.
Oh well,
Not that guy.
But anyways, he did the voice of Admiral Akbar in this last movie because the actor had died. And
Okay.
I think he did his voice maybe in The Force Awakens as well. But anyways, that's just he was on the radio the other day.
So does he have any characters left then? I guess
Well, he
C-3PO
does.
and-
He will do Yoda for like TV series and things like that because Frank Oz is pretty much retired. But Oz did do Yoda. And by the way, I loved Yoda
Yeah, well, that
in
was awesome.
Last
Oh
Jedi.
yeah.
That was the fun Yoda.
Yeah.
Somebody had mentioned that too. That Ryan Johnson had brought back not the military Yoda,
Yeah,
but the
the one
joking
from Empire
around.
who hated
He's sitting there going, "Yee,"
The old,
you know.
the old senile Yoda.
Yeah, the old yes, the
Barrymore.
Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back Yoda.
Yeah. I'll burn down the tree.
The one
doesn't
that's like
matter.
you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you're like,
Right.
all right, you can hang out with him, but don't repeat anything that
Yeah,
he says.
yeah.
Who has to sit next to Grandpa Yoda?
Crazy Uncle Yoda over there. All right, guys. Anything else before we wrap this up? This has been a fun conversation. Things that we've talked about, you know, just in person to each other in the classrooms and in the hallways, and when we see each other. We just finally brought it together officially. This is not the last time that we'll have one of these round table discussions on a podcast. I just thought this would be the perfect group to have for Star Wars and our retrospective. So until then, guys, listening to us right now, we are on iTunes. Please subscribe. Please rate us. Please leave a review. If you want to follow me, Curtis Allen, you can find me on Twitter at History, THRU, Thru Film, History Through Film. Anything else, guys? Follow me.
Be with you.
May the force be with you
May the
always.
force be with us all.
You said it
Until
enough.
next time, thank you for joining us.